Hello everyone, welcome to StudyIQ. So we will continue our discussion on economy. We are in the module industry, okay? So we were discussing about this particular module industry, and so far we have completed around 6 sessions. We started off with various industrial policies, and in the first session we have actually discussed about Industrial Policy Resolution 1948 to New Industrial Policy 1991. So from 1948 to 91, all the major industrial policies and resolutions we have discussed, and in the second session we have actually seen the assessment of New Industrial Policy 1991, and we have discussed in detail about that. And in the third session we have discussed about manufacturing sector, and we have also discussed about national manufacturing policy in that particular session. In the fourth session we actually discussed about Make in India, okay, and we have seen various components of Make in India. And in the fifth session we actually talked about skill development, which is also a part of Make in India. And in that session we have talked about various schemes like Startup India, Stand Up India, Adult Innovation Mission, and all those things we have discussed. So after that we have talked about Companies Act, okay. So then we have discussed about Companies Act, and what are the major changes which actually happened recently, like decriminalization of certain cases, like social related to corporate social responsibility, filing, etc. All those things we have covered. And after that we have discussed about public sector, okay. So we have discussed about public sector, and we have divided this into 3 parts, and we have discussed that in detail. So that was our 7th session. Now this is your 8th session on this particular module industry. So here in this session we are going to discuss about one of the most important topic, which is directly there in your syllabus, that is disinvestment, or you will also say it as divestment, okay. So disinvestment or divestment. So what is disinvestment? It is nothing but selling of the shares of PSUs to public sector, okay. So in simple terms, selling of shares of public sector undertakings to private sector. So what is public sector undertakings? We have seen in the previous session, okay. So which is part of public sector. In public sector we have discussed about departmental undertakings, non-departmental undertakings. Under that, non-departmental undertakings is what we have understood as public sector undertakings, okay. And then we have discussed under that there are 2 cases: those companies which are registered under Companies Act 1956, and then 2013. Now the Companies Act that we have discussed, which was replaced 1956 Companies Act, was actually replaced with Companies Act 2013, and then those which are registered under specific acts, okay. So I think we have discussed somewhere here. Yeah, here we have discussed public sector, and we have discussed about departmental undertakings like railways and post, then non-departmental undertakings like PSUs, okay. So registered under Companies Act and registered under special acts. Then apart from that, financial institutions also. Then we have discussed about the difference between public sector and government company. When I am talking about public sector, 100% owned by the government. Government company means more than 51% ownership will be with the government. But in India, both are used interchangeably, okay. Then we have discussed in detail about other various things related to public sector. Then in this session we are actually talking about disinvestment. Now before we start with this, if you have missed out any of the previous sessions, you can get all those videos in this Telegram channel. Join the Telegram channel, you'll get all my videos over there, and you can get in touch with me in this Instagram ID, or this is my Facebook ID. And if you want to learn economy with me, I have course in StudyIQ, so you'll get that course in StudyIQ app in future, okay. So I'll be doing the course, so you can get in touch with me here. Now disinvestment means selling of shares of PSUs to private sector, okay. So simple terms, selling of shares of PSU to private sector. So when I'm talking about private sector, it can be private companies, it can be general public, okay, it can be financial institutions, workers of PSU, all this come. So private companies, or it can be general public. I don't think I want to write it completely. It can be general public, it can be financial institutions, and it can be workers of PSUs. The shares can be issued to the workers of the same PSU. Now there may be a confusion. What is broader, disinvestment or privatization, which is a broader concept? See, privatization is more broader. privatization is more broader because when it comes to privatization, actually more than 50% of the shares will be transferred to private. That lead to privatization, or selling of assets. Okay, so selling completely, that lead to privatization. Nationalization we have discussed, that means buying of assets. Okay, so if you see, when we discussed about budget, so in budget we have seen receipts and expenditure. Okay, so on one side receipts, on the other side expenditure, and then receipts we have discussed about revenue receipts, and then we have discussed about capital receipts, and then we have discussed about revenue expenditure, and then we have discussed about capital expenditure. Okay, now receipts means you are receiving money. So if it is capital receipts, there are the two possibilities of receiving money. So either you will sell your assets. Okay, so you sell your assets to get money, so that means your assets are decreasing. Okay, or you will borrow from someone, that means your liability will increase. Okay, so this is the two possibilities when it comes to capital receipts. What about capital expenditure? When it comes to capital expenditure, you will be spending money, so you will be spending that for development of some capital or infrastructure, so that means assets will increase. Okay, so either you will be lending to someone. Okay, that expenditure may be lending, so that means actually you are giving loan, that is actually an asset. So what will happen here? Assets will increase. What about liability? You might be repaying a loan by using that money, that may be your expenditure, so liabilities will decrease, right? This is what we have seen here. So liability is increasing. So capital receipts means you are actually receiving money, so assets will reduce. That means one of the method here will be disinvestment, right? Disinvestment means you're actually selling the shares. So when you're selling the share, what will actually happen? You will get money, so that is actually the assets are reduced, right? When you're selling the share, assets are reduced, so it is actually a capital receipt. So I will write under here disinvestment, or totally you are selling the assets. Okay, selling assets completely. Now when I'm talking about disinvestment, you are selling the share, so that can be maybe 10%, this is also disinvestment, 20%, this is also disinvestment, 30%, 40%, 50%, 60%, all are disinvestment. But if it is more than 50%, what will happen? You see, when you are going for disinvestment, you will try to keep at least 51%, right? You try to keep at least 51% because management control will be with you. Then only it will be a government company. I've told you in the beginning, government company means 51% minimum ownership should be with the government. The management should be with the government. Otherwise, it won't be a government company. So when you go for disinvestment, you try to keep that 51%, which is minimum required. Now, if you go beyond that, if it is less than 51%, then that become a private company, that won't be a government company. So when I'm talking about privatization, the privatization is broader than disinvestment because it actually increase the role and scope of private sector. So increase role and scope of private sector. So basically one of the means of privatization is actually disinvestment. Okay, so disinvestment is actually one of the means, or dereservation. We have discussed when we discussed about new industrial policy 1991. We have discussed about dereservation, delicensing, etc. Then if it is disinvestment more than 50%, then management will be shifted to private sector. Okay, so that is also when we discuss about strategic disinvestment, we will discuss about this in detail. So strategic disinvestment or sale we will discuss shortly. So what I want to tell you is privatization and disinvestment. Privatization is a broader concept. Disinvestment is actually one of the means of privatization. Okay, so privatization means it actually increase the role and scope of private sector. Disinvestment means actually selling the shares of PSUs to private sector. It can be an individual, it can be a financial institution, it can be a private company, okay, etc. Now, what are the objectives? Objectives, firstly, this is one of the objective, basically to raise money. So to get this fund, so you will be selling the assets. Okay, so that is one thing. In case if you are having a budgetary deficit, okay, so like if there is a revenue deficit, to meet that revenue deficit you have to sell some assets. Okay, so that is to be done for meeting the day-to-day consumption expenditure, and there is no other way. Okay, otherwise you have to borrow. Either of those you have to do. So you will sell your assets. Okay, So that is one thing. Apart from that, basically we can write to reorient public investment. So I'll tell what is this: to reorient public investment. So when I'm talking about reorienting public investment, means actually to transfer resources from non-strategic to strategic areas. Okay, so that means transfer of resources from non-strategic to strategic sectors, means which one is more important for social purpose. Like for example, when I'm talking about a car manufacturing company, okay, or strategic sectors means I can talk about schools, hospitals, etc. So you may sell your shares in this like car manufacturing company, which is not that strategic sector, or that you can divert that to schools, hospitals, etc., which is having more socially significant. Okay, so that is one thing, to reorient public investment. Second one that I've already discussed, to reduce the fiscal deficit or to solve the problem of revenue deficit, to meet the day-to-day consumption expenditure of the government. Okay, all these you can write here: to reduce fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is actually the borrowing. We have discussed that in detail in the module of budget. Okay, so then to improve performance of the public sector undertakings, to improve performance of PSUs. How? When you're selling the shares, actually new management will come, or private sector expertise will come, and incentive based schemes, etc., will come. So like personal incentives, okay, personal incentives in terms of profit motive. So then technical expertise of private sector. So all these are the ways in which you can improve the performance of PSU. So when you're selling, when private participation is more, actually the performance, the possibility of improving will be better. Okay, then I've told you about strategic disinvestment or strategic sale. Strategic disinvestment or sale. So here actually the management also will be shifted. You may sell more than 51% of the share of government in public sector undertakings to the private, so that the management will also be shifted. So minimum will be like 26%, at least 26% you will sell. So significant share of government in the PSUs will be sold to the private sector, and management may also be shifted. Okay, so that is what strategic disinvestment. So when I'm talking about this word, you keep in mind, this is very important. This can be asked in prelims as well as mains also. Strategic importance means significant portion of the share of the government, at least 26% will be sold. It can be more than 50 also, so that the management may also be shifted to the private sector. Okay, so under this, government sell significant percentage of share, that means at least 26%. Okay, at least 26% of PSU to a private company having expertise in the concerned business. So minimum 26 means if it is beyond 50, the management will also be shifted. Okay, so that's what strategic disinvestment. Now next objective is basically to increase transparency and accountability of PSUs. Increase transparency and accountability. This is general one. Okay, so increase transparency and accountability of PSUs to general public. Okay, now we will see disinvestment policy and process right from 91 till now. Okay, so disinvestment policy and process. So it actually initiated in 1991 when we discussed about new industrial policy 1991. I have told you this point. Disinvestment is one of the most important aspect that we have discussed over there. So it actually initiated in 1991. So minority shares were actually sold to the financial institutions. Okay, like 5 to 10% of the shares of PSUs were actually sold to the financial institutions. So minority, some shares are actually sold to the financial institutions. Then in 1992, there was a committee which was set up, which was headed by Dr. C. Rangarajan. Okay, so Disinvestment Committee was set up. Disinvestment Committee was set up under Dr. C. Rangarajan. There were some recommendations here, like there should be a separate fund which is created for this disinvestment proceeds, but some of them were accepted, not that significant, because more important items are actually going to come now, and in fact separate funds are actually set up later. We will see that. Okay, so this is not that significant. I just told you when we discussed about the evolution. So in 1991, when NDA government came, Ministry of Disinvestment was actually created. Okay, so NDA government created. Till then it was a department. Earlier it was a department which was taking care of this, but now a separate ministry was created for this particular purpose, that is for disinvestment. So Ministry of Disinvestment. And if you remember, when we discussed about, in the previous session, when we discussed about public sector, we discussed about, Navratnas. In Navratnas, I told you IPCL and VSNL were sold, right? IPCL was sold to Reliance and VSNL was sold to Tata. So this we have discussed over there already. So I'm not getting into that detail now. So not in 91, this is 99. Okay, 1999, India government, Ministry of Disinvestment. Now next is very important. In 2004, what happened? UPA government came. So this was UPA 1. Now UPA 1, what is the point here you need to remember? Or UPA 1, what was the speciality? It was actually backed by the left party. Okay, left parties. So actually left parties were against disinvestment. Why they were against disinvestment? Because they want contribution of PSUs to be more. They are actually against privatization. Disinvestment is actually a kind of privatization, giving more scope, freedom for the private sector, right? So left parties were actually against privatization. So they want government control over everything. So this disinvestment, a Ministry of Disinvestment was created, that again will be converted back to a department. So they are not giving importance to disinvestment. Okay, so they actually discouraged. So that ministry was abandoned and a department was created under Ministry of Finance. Okay, so they actually discouraged and disinvestment actually decreased. So this is during which phase? This 2004 to 2009 phase, the first UPA. Second UPA, you will see more disinvestment proceeds. Okay, so it's like they wanted government to hold more than 51% at any cost. That means, okay, you have to be the owner of the company. You should not change the management of the company. So that in no way allowed. Okay, left parties were actually against privatization. So they were against disinvestment, not completely against disinvestment. Even if you go for it, it should be less than 50%. You should never go for changing management control to the private sector. Okay, because these PSUs, I've told you already, these are very important from social perspective. So, and they have given focus on revival of PSUs, those loss-making PSUs. Few of the PSUs were loss-making, so revival of PSUs. So you will see during this time revival of PSUs, and they have set up a board for reconstruction of public sector enterprises. So board for reconstruction of public sector enterprises. See, for earlier we have discussed about one BIFR for revival of sick PSUs. Now here, board for reconstruction of public sector enterprises. Then in 2005, National Investment Fund was created. So just before, when I talked about Dr. C. Rangarajan committee, I've told you one of the recommendation was a separate fund has to be created for disinvestment proceeds, and a few of the things which was accepted, but that's not significant at that point of time. But when I'm discussing here, 2005, National Investment Fund was created for the disinvestment proceeds. So all the money which is received, all the receipts which is coming out of disinvestment will go to National Investment Fund. How it will be used, I'll tell you. Okay, so it will be used differently during different times. So from 2005 to 9, I'll tell you how it is used. 9 to 13, I'll tell you how it is used, and 13 onwards, how is it using. All are different. Okay, I'll tell you all this. So National Investment Fund, NIF, was created in 2005. So this, disinvestment proceeds, the divestment proceeds will go to this NIF. Okay, so NIF will be established. Then this will be invested in stock exchange. Okay, so when you invest in stock exchange, you will get income, right? So directly this NIF, you want spend in the social sector. What you will do, NIF will be invested in stock exchange. The income, the income out of which 75% you will be spending for social sector. And as I have told you, the rest of the amount, that is 25%, will be spent for the expansion of PSUs. Okay, so this 25% will be for expansion of PSUs. So this was, during this phase, 2005 when it was established to 2009 till the time of UPA 1. All these are under the pressure of, left parties. So even for the creation of fund also, and for this revival of PSUs also, all these are the credit to be given to whom? The credit to be given to not UPA, actually to left parties. Okay, if left parties was not there, maybe more disinvestment you would have seen. Okay, and revival may not be there. If it is sick PSU, if it is loss making PSU, directly you may sell. Okay, that should have been, or that would have been happened if the left parties were in support, or left parties were not there. Now in 2009 UPA 2 came into power. So 2009 the entire fund of NIF is actually used to social sector. Okay, so entire fund will be, that means 100%. That means now there is no investment in stock exchange. You're not taking the income, not 75% here, not 25% here. Entire fund will be directly going to social sector, not investing in stock exchange. So this was during this time, 2009 to 2013. Okay, so all the PSUs having no accumulated losses to be listed in stock exchange. So here, now all the PSUs having not accumulated losses means profit in the previous 3 years, to be listed in stock exchange. That means minimum 10% of the shares to be issued to general public. So all PSUs are now going to be issuing IPO, will be listed in stock exchange, and minimum 10% of the shares of PSUs to be sold to the general public. So let me write down here, all PSUs having no accumulated losses, that means earned profit in previous 3 years, you can write that here, to be listed in stock exchange. Okay, at least 10% of shares to be issued to the public. Now from 2013, this was till 2013, right? So this is how 2005 to 2009 NIF will be used like this. 2009 to 2013 directly NIF will be used here for this thing. Now 2013, the disinvestment proceeds will go to NIF, so the National Investment Fund will be there. Now this now will be used in selected capital expenditures. Okay, it's like selected capital expenditure. So what do you mean by this? So if you remember, I've talked about this point when we discussed about Basel norms. I've discussed Basel norms in detail. You please watch that video. I've covered everything about Basel norms. You can get that in my Telegram channel. Okay, so here when we discussed about Basel norms, I've told you the capital adequacy ratio was increased, right? So when capital adequacy ratio increase means the banks have to pump more capital, so that that capital adequacy ratio to be managed. Private sector banks, no problem, they can actually issue IPO and they can get money. But government banks, the PSBs, it is very difficult, because when you issue IPO, what will happen? You are diluting the share. So 50% contribution may go to private. That is not accepted, right? That is not allowed. So 51% you have to keep with yourself for the management. So you cannot dilute and you cannot give more or you cannot issue more shares to the public to raise money. So what you need, government have to fund. Okay, so how government will fund? So from this, government will fund. So this is also a kind of reorientation. You are selling some assets, and whatever you are getting from there, you will be using that for recapitalization of this public sector banks to meet the Basel III requirements, Basel norm requirements. The capital adequacy ratio standard has to be maintained, and for that you are using that particular money, which is actually received from the disinvestment proceeds or directly from NIF. You are using that money for recapitalization of PSBs to meet the requirements under Basel III. Okay, and watch that video, Basel norms that we have discussed, Basel 1, Basel 2, Basel 3, the concepts, what is capital adequacy ratio, how is it measured, what is the advantages, everything we have covered. Then some of the expenditure in railways, etc. Capital expenditure in railways, etc. See, what is this? NIF is actually part of public account. Okay, so you can get a prelims question here. This is part of public account. Now, who is deciding this? It is actually decided by Department of Economic Affairs. So this will be decided by Department of Economic Affairs. Now, then in 2014, which government? NDA government again came. So NDA government. Now Department of Disinvestment is actually renamed now by which department? Department of Investment and Public Assets Management. So DIPAM, Department of Investment and Public Asset Management. Okay. So now means of disinvestment. So if you talk about means of disinvestment, so either you will offer for sale or general public, and government may retain 51% minimum ownership, that means management of the company, or the other one, as I have already told you, strategic disinvestment to private companies who are the expertise in that particular area. Okay, so private companies. So here government may sell more than 51%, so that management will also be shifted. May shift management also. Okay, may transfer the management also. So here who will Niti Aayog will take care of this. Niti Aayog will suggest the means and routes of disinvestment on case by case basis. So what are the criticisms or issues? You are selling this for meeting your day-to-day expenditure, that is not considered desirable. Then you may be selling the profit-making PSUs also, and you may be selling those PSUs which could be revived. Okay, so now without trying for the revival, you are selling it. Then undervaluation of shares, disinvestment of strategic PSUs, okay, like oil, etc., strategic sector. So that's about this session. I hope you understood. If you have any doubt, you can get in touch with me here. Any doubts related to civil service examination, okay, you can get in touch with me here. My classes is available in StudyIQ. Regular economic classes, not this YouTube classes, regular economic classes also is available on StudyIQ. So see you guys. Thank you.